Now we're come to an interesting, this chapter closes with a fascinating conclusion. Matthew's primary theme. He describes the purpose of all history. You talk about chutzpah. Who would presume to describe the purpose of all history? Libraries are filled with volumes of people who tried to summarize history or create some sense out of it. In just one verse, we're going to have the purpose of all history declared by God himself. But it's also going to lead to the tragedy of all history. What's the most tragic event that's happened in the history of mankind? You can make a list of candidates. Some pretty great tragedies have occurred. And what's the triumph of all history? The purpose, the setback, the triumph, all summarized in a couple of verses here. Jesus says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathers her chickens under her wings." This is a phrase he's borrowing, in a sense, from Deuteronomy 32, from Moses himself. And when he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem," technically that's a synecdoche. What that means isn't the city, it means the whole nation. It's the specific implying the generic, the common figure of speech. He's obviously not talking about just the city limits. He's using that as an idiom for the nation. "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets." It wasn't the city, it was the nation. "And stonest them which are sent unto thee. How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings." Boy, how history would have been different if at Kadesh Barnea they had not listened to the 10, but listened to the 2 spies, and so on. When you get to Acts 7, you'll discover Stephen gives the Sanhedrin a history lesson and summarizes all of Israel history, and his pattern is they always blow it the first time, they get it the second time. Outline his speech, and you learn some interesting things. They wouldn't let him finish, but you can figure out where he was going if you outline it. In any case, this is the purpose of all history. God accomplishing his plan of redemption through his people he chose to accomplish that through. The nation that produces the Messiah, it could have been very different. But that leads to the tragedy of all history, that ye would not. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate." Boy, it sure was. 38 years later, temple's gone. And they've been struggling for over 19 centuries with how do they practice Judaism without an altar and without, by the shedding of blood, only by the shedding of blood is the remission of sins. And they have no place to shed blood. They got a problem. They have to redefine Judaism, and they do in AD 90, the Council of Yamnia. But anyway, so that's the tragedy of all history. The extremes that God went to, and they blew it. But that's not where the thing ends, because we have the triumph of all history in the next verse. "For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth, until ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord." Hey, the good news is, it's not over. He is coming back. When is he coming back? There's a key word here. Until ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. That was what they were singing the beginning of the triumphal entry. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. They're going to be saying that again. And that's when it'll all change. And that's really an echo of Hosea 5:15. The last verse in Hosea 5, God says, "I will go and return to my place." In order to return, he must have left it. "I will go and return to my place until they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction, they will seek me earnestly." Boy, that's a nice little clarifying tidbit there in Hosea. God apparently will return to his place. That implies he's left it. And you see the word until, that's a milestone. What does that milestone involve? They'll acknowledge their offense and seek his face. What will it take for them to do that? What he calls here their affliction. Jesus will label that time the Great Tribulation, and it's important. We'll be getting into that in the coming chapters.